You are listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com for all your racing merchandise needs. I'm your co-host, Aaron McTeer. Other co-host you may have seen walking out of a Great Clips with a big old smile on his face. You may have seen him at a dirt track and at Road America this past weekend. He is one and only Scott Bowie. And by the way, I know you just had some mozzarella sticks and a 4-piece chicken something, and I hope you enjoy that as well. And it sounds like you were even taking in a concert.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't know about the concert part. We were. I accidentally recorded a conversation and sent it to you,
Yes, you
which
did.
I do that every once in a while. So if
Hey, at
anybody
least you
who's
weren't
my
saying anything bad about me.
no, luckily we had just stopped. But
Right?
yeah, no, it's funny. Every once in a while I'll just do that where I accidentally send a voice memo or something.
Yep. I figured that was the case. I didn't expect to get a 2-minute voice conversation from you.
Yeah, but yeah, went to Road America this weekend. Watched a friend of the show, Jagger Jones race. Tough weekend for Jagger. He got spun on the start of the first race. Second race, he started sixth, got shuffled back to eighth, got back to seventh. Ran hard, just wasn't his weekend. Um, I got to watch a little bit of the IndyCars run. Um, Man, I'd never been to Road America. What a beautiful facility.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
It's
I've never
something
been there, but I've heard.
I would suggest anybody go. They had a big crowd. Um, by all accounts, everybody was talking about how much the crowd was up. So yeah, it was a great weekend. Um, we drove back. Actually, we didn't stay for the IndyCar race, and we drove back Sunday morning and listened to the race the best way you can, and that's with our friends at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network, and listen to Mark and do the call of the race, and it sounded like it was a great race. I don't know visually there it was a great race, but over the radio, it was an amazing race. So
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and like I said, Ericsson is currently in the points lead right now. Had a strong finish second. And Alexander Rossi, man, ever since that announcement came out, that dude has been fast.
well, actually, it was right before the announcement, right? It was
Right?
at
No,
the
you're right. You're right.
Speedway.
Yeah.
In not qualifying, but during the
Well,
race,
to
it's
be
like
fair,
this.
probably at that point, they probably already, I mean, he knew the announcement was coming. So,
Well, it was a terribly kept secret at that
yeah.
point, right? I mean, it was coming soon, um, but it's crazy how the switches flip, and all of a sudden, where you were struggling before, all of a sudden now things are going your way. So good for that guy. The sport, like I said before, is much better when Rossi is up front.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. So, no, that was definitely, a good race. Joseph Newgarden got the win. And speaking of Jagger Jones, today, or I guess this is going out Wednesday, earlier in the week, we released a video of racing go karts with Jagger Jones, which was really cool. That was back in May. Me and my buddy Jacob, who's part of Race 92 as well. We definitely had a lot of fun with it, and it was a good learning experience. I learned a lot,
Yeah, yeah, you
and
did.
it's a fun video.
Yeah, and and this, if anybody's been listening to the show, this is kind of what I was alluding to before. Aaron has been working on things um, like that video. He did another video for Jagger, kind of talking about Jagger coming back and running the Speedway. Those are both up and posted. Please check them out. Aaron put in a ton of work on those videos. So, uh, man, hats off to you, bud. You did great work on both of them. And your girlfriend Gabby, she did some of the video work
Yes, she did
at
on
the
the
go
go kart
kart
video.
one, and
Yeah.
she did a great job. So, man, it was just it was fun, great, just great work.
Yeah, and we're definitely working on some other things as well, and have some other things in the work and other ideas of doing some other fun, similar things like that. We want to really, obviously, we're a podcast, but we want to, kind of put our boots on the ground a little bit and kind of be on location and do some stuff, fun stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fun, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what this is about, having
And you made a
fun.
cameo. You even made a small cameo in the go kart video.
I did. It was a very small cameo, and if you watch all the way to the end, you see me again. But you have to watch past the credits.
But what's really funny. So when we were starting the second race, because I was editing the video, I mean the carts were really loud, but surprisingly, I could still hear you talking over the carts.
Surprisingly, I know my
And
voice
the
carries.
only thing I heard was "believe it or not." So I don't know what you were talking about, but you just said "believe it or not." So probably something about how,
Yeah, I have
yeah,
no idea what we were talking about. No, that was a good time, and and the people at Fast
yeah.
Times were generous with their time in allowing us to come in there and do that, and the workers there were excellent. I would suggest anybody going there, if you're in Indy, go to Fast Times.
Yes.
Those carts are fast, and they'll give you a workout.
And Jagger actually, said that I got to be careful how I say this. He said that it was harder to harder to
Well,
drive the car than the USF 2000. Like, it was more of a workout,
it was physically
more demanding.
tougher
There you
to
go.
steer and to run on that small track with the go kart. Yeah.
And I'm still recovering from that, dude. My ribs has been sore for like 3 weeks. I like bruised a rib bad, man. Like I had trouble sleeping for like a week.
I can believe that. You don't have a lot of spare meat on your body, so
Well, dude, and they even have like an extra seat cushion I put in the seat, because remember we were talking about this with Taylor Reimer, because he says she has to use the same type of seat cushions when she goes to places like that, because she's real small and like small like me,
right.
and it's just like, if I don't have that, man, it'd be a whole different. I'd be even worse, man. It'd be bad, because I've done it before without that. My back is just bruised up and down. And Jagger
Yeah,
got pretty beat. He was showing me. I saw him one day at the track after that, and he was, pulling his shirt up a little bit. He's like, "Yeah, I got a bruise here. I got a bruise here." And I'm like, "Man, Cape Motorsports is going to come after us."
he's a funny guy, man. And uh somebody else who had a great weekend this weekend was William Jack Miller, or is it Jack William Miller? I'm sorry.
Jack William Miller, yeah, I saw
Jack
that.
William Miller. I'm so sorry. He had a great weekend as well. Another guest of the show. So man, and he's had a few, things are starting to come around his way,
Yeah,
and good for him.
yeah,
I know he's put
definitely.
a lot of effort into it.
And his dad definitely, puts a lot into his son, and the team and the sport. We would definitely like to see, and obviously Dr. Jack is a great guy. Like we
Yes.
said a couple weeks ago, I talked to him a little bit during the Indy 500 weekend, and he said whenever we want to have him back on the show, he's more than welcome to. We're more welcome to have him back on. So definitely great guy, definitely great to see things working out for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome, man. I like it when any young guy, um, they start seeing success because you put in so much time and effort.
Absolutely.
It's good to see that success.
So as we said last week, our show today is Sebastian Saavedra. Drove in multiple Indy 500s. Won races in Indy Lights. I think he had a class win in 24 Hours of Daytona. So great driver. He was someone who started IndyCar. I mean, he was drove in the Indy 500 super young. I mean, he's like 19. And he's, still, I mean, he's only like 30 something, early 30. So he's super young. He still has fight left in him, and he's still, looking. I mean, if an IndyCar ride comes this way, he'll take it. It's definitely great to see. And yeah, Sebastian's a great guy. Someone that when I kind of grew up in IndyCar racing, I mean, I really started going to races kind of when he started racing. So it's kind of cool to talk to him, because I kind of saw him kind of progress through the years. Race for different teams and stuff. So it's cool to talk to him for sure.
Yeah, it was a great talk. Uh, Great guy. Unfortunately, he started very young, and once like so many young drivers in all forms of motorsports, sometimes by the time they start figuring it out, uh, the door starts shutting on them a little bit. And unfortunately, that's happened to him in the IndyCar side
Hmm.
a little bit. But I know just from talking to you, who's talked to him a little bit more than I did, that he is trying to put things together, and hopefully something does come together for him in the future. He can get back out and start running Indy cars a little more.
Absolutely.
Um, so that would be good to see, and it was like I said, it was a great talk.
Yeah, for sure. And next week we're going to release Chris Neifel, former Indy 500 competitor. He drove in, I think, two or three 500s.
2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, he shouldn't have probably. He'll listen to this and he'll correct me. So I do apologize, Chris. But great guy, and he's someone who is a fan of the show. He actually was watching and listening to some of our podcasts, which I mean, that really does mean a lot. You don't know, Chris, how much that means. That really means a lot. It's really cool that someone like yourself is actually putting any stock into myself and especially Scott Valley.
Right. Yeah. I question your judgment, sir. No, it was great that to hear that. And it's always great. Like we've received some emails this week. I know you shared them with me, and thanks everybody who sent emails, comments,
Yeah.
on our videos. So, and it means a lot. It helps us make our product better. It helps us get an idea of what people are thinking about. So thanks to the people who did that. And again, thanks to Chris for taking the time to listen to us. It does mean a lot. It really does.
Yep. And I forget the number, but he was joking at the end of the interview about he's like, so I'm gonna be like episode number like
Yeah, yeah,
100.
like he knew,
Yeah.
like he really had it all kind of figured out.
He was like, I was on Marshall Pruitt's podcast and I was number 5. Well, we're not. Well, we're not Marshall Pruitt, so yeah, no, we sorry, Chris, you're not number 5, but you are in the top 100, so definitely feel honored in that regard.
Yeah, and speaking of Marshall Pruitt, I saw him driving around. It was good to see him at the racetrack. I don't know Marshall,
Hmm.
but if anybody follows him at all, it's good to see him back at the racetracks. He adds something definitely to the sport that's needed. So it was really nice to see Marshall out and about. Um, and yeah, and again, man, if anybody gets a chance to go to Road America that hasn't been there, I highly suggest going. You're not going to be able to watch the whole track. In fact, you'll only be able to watch a video board in a very small section of the racetrack. But at that, even it's a really really neat place, and I would suggest everybody going to it.
Yeah, and I will be in Mid Ohio in a couple weeks. It's pretty much the same thing. I've never been to Road America, but I've seen enough video and photos of Road America. I'm pretty sure it's pretty similar. Where it's really cool, real big into the camping stuff like Road America is, and they just get a lot of people, big following in
Yeah,
Ohio. And it's just really cool atmosphere, and I'm sure Road America is very similar to that.
yeah. I went to Mid Ohio once when I was very young.
Oh,
I remember parts of it. I don't remember very much about it.
well,
I do remember that it was a very large place, though.
I can tell you the track hasn't changed much since you last went there. The facilities, I mean, it's original garages. I think the bathrooms are original. I mean, everything is original. I mean, with it adds to. I get, some people may not like that, but it does. It makes you feel like you're back. I don't know. I don't mind it just because I just feel like it's part of the track at this point.
Right. Yeah. No, it's like anything else. I mean, we all like the new and shiny, but yet then there's
Hmm.
this old and nostalgic as well. And you just,
Yeah.
as long as it's as long as it still functions, then I never have a problem with the old and nostalgic as long as it's still functionable.
Yep. It's still a road course, like Marco Greco said about it. Remember he said about Indianapolis Motor Speedway? I said it's changed a lot since you last went there. He goes, "Is it still an oval?"
I
Yes, it is.
remember that.
But yeah, no. So we want to thank everyone for listening, and I know that we have a little bit more racing news, something kind of on the sadder note, and I'll let you talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So, very sad note. Johnny Caples passed away um, uh, at the end of last week. Uh, he Now Johnny is someone I knew as an acquaintance. He would come in my shop. I knew him from before that. He allowed us to make stuff for his pride and joy, which was his hot rod, which really meant a lot. But Johnny meant a lot to a lot of people I knew, that I know, I should say, and he meant a lot to auto racing. Uh, his wife Dana, his I would call him stepson, Dana's son Roy Carruthers. Johnny has children as well. They all, Johnny meant a lot to a lot of people, and he was a mentor to a lot of people. And I'm going to read some of Johnny's kind of accomplishments. Richie Murray from USAC really kind of chronicled them. So please bear with me one moment as I open this up. Uh, you know, so again, and the great Richie Murray, who we're going to have on at some point, put this together. He, Johnny did everything in the sport. He was a driver, won a USAC Sprint Car Show driving for Al Unser in New York. Started racing at the age of 15, running modifieds. He later on went on, and as Johnny told me one time, he goes, "I never retired. I quit putting the helmet on." He said, "I never announced my retirement. I just quit putting the helmet on." And so he worked for the Bells Parnelli Jones Racing. He won back-to-back championships with Joe Leonard. He worked for Alex Morales. He won 2 races with Alex Morales Racing. He won and they were both Michigan 500s. He won the inaugural with Pancho Carter, and he won again with Johnny Rutherford in 1986. He then ended up purchasing the assets of that team from Alex. When Alfa Romeo come into the sport, he ran that team. It was his team. Um, and then later on, he went ahead and was, I believe, in charge of CART. He was later on in charge of USAC. And then he was very instrumental in forming the organization that allowed Formula One and the MotoGP to race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He was in charge of the putting that group together. Again, Johnny Caples, he did a lot in the sport, did a lot for the sport, and the sport is lesser without Johnny Caples being in it. So thank you for everything, Johnny. Thank you for being a friend, and it was great, getting to know you over the years. And in a lot of ways, and I've talked about this before, Johnny hated when I'd start the 20 questions on him. When he would sit on that step stool in the shop, I would just start peppering questions at him, just firing them at him. And he told me one time, he goes, "Man, you just always ask questions." And he meant it jokingly, but I hadn't seen Johnny in a long time. I know he'd been ill for a while, uh, but I definitely will miss not seeing Johnny again. And I wish his family nothing but the best.
Absolutely, definitely sad to hear. Well, I think I think that's pretty much everything. Like I said, I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. Do you have anything else to add?
I've got nothing else. I again, please send questions, comments, whatever you have. Please stop us and say hi if you see us at a racetrack. Um, so again, thanks to everybody. Thanks to all the people who subscribed. Thanks for the people who watched the videos. It really does mean a lot.
Yep, and please hit like and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And also follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, anywhere where podcasts can be found. Like we were saying, we've released some other content with Jagger, working on doing some other stuff. So please check out those videos. I think everyone will enjoy them. And if, like Scott said, if you have any ideas, questions, anything, please comment. And I'm going to try to respond more to stuff. I've responded to a bunch of comments other day. So I remember that you can reply to comments on YouTube. So I'm going to start doing that. And if anyone, like I said, anyone has any questions or ideas for anything, you'd like us to cover or do or whatever, we're coming up on 200 subscribers. So if there's anything you would like Scott Bowie to do when we hit 200, please let me know.
I would prefer it if it involved me sitting down. I can write a small check to a charity. And when I say small, I mean small. But no, thanks to everybody again for subscribing. I can't believe we have almost 200 subscribers, and I can't believe we've done so many of these shows. And it's been a great ride so far.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's crazy that we've been doing this for over a year now, and really how far we progressed in the past year. A lot has happened in that year. It's pretty crazy.
I can't agree more. And I know you guys have heard me use this word before. I just want to have fun. I want to do things that are fun. I'm not going to do things that are for clicks, or there's plenty of people out in the world who do that stuff. I know I've said this before. I enjoy everybody that watches and listens, but I really kind of do this for my own self, to be honest with you. So I get to talk to a lot of people that I've either been friends with for a while, I've respected. I've just it's just been a great enjoyment. And man, I can't wait to keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, thanks everyone. And hope everyone enjoys the Sebastian Saavedra interview. And next week, stay tuned for Chris Neifel. Was a really, really cool interview.
It was.
Great guy. And definitely stay tuned and hope everyone has a great week.
Take care, everybody.
Our guest today won races in Indy Lights and is the IndyCar pole winner. He is a 24 Hours of Daytona class winner and drove in 6 Indianapolis 500s. We are joined by Sebastian Saavedra. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Aaron, Scott, doing good. Enjoying this beautiful weather that Indiana gives us. Looking forward to going down to Florida for a little bit, but all good. Just excited. Thanks for the invite. Looking forward to a good time with you guys.
Well, we're looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I pretty much grew up around IndyCar racing, and kind of when I was really getting introduced to it, you were driving. So I definitely had seen you kind of progress through IndyCar, and I knew when we started this podcast, you were definitely someone we wanted to talk to. And actually, like, I collect racing memorabilia, and I actually have a helmet visor you gave me one year at Kentucky. I forget what year it is, but so it's kind of
awesome. Yeah, I can see quite the collection behind you. It's pretty solid. If it was Kentucky, wow, I think we only went to Kentucky in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. So it was quite a ways to go. Like it.
Yep, I'll have to dig that out and see what the sponsor is. But yeah, but anyway, so talk a little bit about how you first got interested in racing.
So I was just a very active child. I'm from Bogota, Colombia. It's a beautiful city that gave me kind of the opportunity to explore some athleticism at high school mostly. But it was very young when I was given a go-kart by an uncle of mine. I was 7 years old. Actually, it was my 7th birthday. And an uncle gave me a used baby go-kart, which was purple, by the way. The first ever machine was not my favorite color for sure. And I just fell in love with it. You had a lawnmower engine, 4-stroker, and I remember just being in a parking lot, just doing laps on that thing, and I just wanted to kind of like enjoy it a little bit more, like on an actual racetrack. Clearly, we do not have a lot of racetracks down south in my country, but one thing led to the other. We found a little go-kart league, and it was the same year, and that a lot of other racers were. So if you look at, I would love to find that picture somewhere. And in the same go-kart school, it was Carlos Munoz, Carlos Huertas, it was Jackaman, a couple other big names that are still representing Colombia on racing. So that year was a pretty solid racing production from our country to the world, and from there it was just growing in the ranks. I always say is to be in the right place at the right time. Got lucky, the right people were looking at the right places, and they start pushing me in the right locations. And one day it was just being a factory driver from a go-kart team in Europe, winning world championships that led to signing with big brands like BMW and Mercedes, and starting my open wheel racing career. And then given the option to come to America and pursue the American dream on racing. So it's been a blessing. Just looking back, I haven't gone back in time in a while. It just always gives me a smile.
When you actually started racing, would you say like you had a racing goal? I'm guessing like Formula One probably is a big thing over in Colombia, right?
So I started in 97, and 98, we all know Montoya came through the ranks and revolutionized sports in Colombia. I mean, nobody knew about Formula One other than the niche, racer kind of like people. But Montoya put our country in the map, and it of course it was a perfect timing for this huge following of young kids that saw, hey, well, if he could do that, why not us? And that motivated a lot of private sector as well as our families to kind of like, what is it that we need to do to kind of like pursue this Formula One dream? But yes, it was mostly Formula One. I started my career in South America, went to Europe, lived in Europe for a long period of time, developing my skills and kind of like going all the way up from Formula 3. And when that big junction between GP2 back then or Indycar, that was like the biggest decision of my racing career. And of course, I had an amazing opportunity to already be testing an Indycar with Andretti Green Racing back then. And I chose it, not knowing anything about ovals, not knowing anything about American motorsports in general. And the best decision I did is choosing that American path.
Was Formula BMW USA was your first car the first thing you actually raced in America, right? Or was there something else?
Yeah. I think it was the only series which it was in conjunction with the British and the German Formula BMW. There were like four fronts. It was the Asian, British, German, and American. And I had the chance to kind of like mix and match at that point. So we did most of the season in America and half of the season in Germany. And then in 2007, I just moved to all full-blown Europe and Asia.
Was there a moment when you were running go-karts that you felt like, hey, I've got the talent to do this? Or was this something you were doing and others come along and said, hey, we think you have the talent to do this. Let us help you.
I just loved what I was doing. I think it was very, very late in my racing career that I wanted a professionalism out of it. I just enjoy being on track and just doing my craft, and I knew I had something. Just mostly like in Colombia, like it was a year. I only was a year in go-karts in Colombia, and I remember, well, after winning a few championships, you're all gorged and you feel like you're somebody. And then my first reality check was in Brazil. I was sent to Brazil for kind of that reason, kind of like, hey, you have something, but you're not gonna grow technically if you stay in Colombia, which there's not, this development kind of potential. So Brazil was where I still say until today was where my skill was perfected, and kind of like that's where the first time I had the reality check of like, oh, I'm not making the finals, and there's very aggressive drivers and they're kicking my ass. I mean, they're like, I was like not this strong driver that I was in my hometown, and that kind of like caused like a little bit of a big snap of what is it that it needs to take for me to get to exceed my expectations and win. And it was a very strong year of development, and I loved it. A lot of running in the rain that I never did in Colombia that much, and a lot of really good people around me to push my limits and teach that Brazilian racing craft, which is very different from anywhere else in the world. And that aggressiveness came straight from there, and that was a perfect timing as I got signed to CRG to go to do the Industry Cup in Europe, and the European Cup, the World Cup, and that was kind of like after winning everything Brazil, then boom, go straight to Europe, and again another reality check. Like now you're not racing against 40 go-karts, now you have 300 go-karts, and now you have to make it to multiple semifinals in order to make it to the final. And again, you start like 6 months without making it to the finals, and you bang your head every now and then, kind of like, what is going on? Like I was so strong in Brazil, and then you remember, oh, it happened the same from Bogota to Sao Paulo. So it was a big reality check that I'm happy that it happened the way it did, because it really formed me, not only on the racetrack, but outside of it. It just gives you a different strength and mental strength that until today I use on everything.
Your first year in Indy Lights, you had 2 wins. So would you say at that point you were completely determined and focused on pursuing a career in America racing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was 2008, after doing Formula 3 in Europe, that I had that big cold, and I came testing because I tested DTM that year, and then I jumped into an Indy Lights in Putnam Park, and went to Kansas Speedway with Schmidt. Schmidt Peterson was actually my first ever oval experience, which was just 8 drivers, 5 laps each, same seat, same car. Show us what you got. And I have never been in an oval before, so that was quite the experience alone. So I was living in Austria back then, in Vienna. So it was a very long travel to get to a very cold Indiana, to just have 5 laps and then go back to Europe. And thankfully, Putnam Park was enough to get a call from Andretti. And that's how it started. That call made everything different, because I no longer was pursuing the European path. I just saw like the chance of following kind of like the Montoya mentality, break America and then like see where it goes. So when I came to the US, I was already full mindset that I needed to excel in the US.
So you were Indy Lights Rookie of the Year in 2009, and then from there, how did you parlay that into your running the Speedway, which was, I think you ran the Speedway the next year?
Well, 2009. Well, 2009, you ran it in Indy Lights, right?
Yeah, yeah, so
Right.
2009 was a full season on lights and testing in the Indycar, the older Indycar, and there was a big option. So that time there was a big chance that Danica was going to go to NASCAR, and there was going to be that seat open, and like we had the potential of jumping 2010 on an IndyCar already, and that was huge for me. But that kind of didn't really materialize on her end, and I was left with the option of repeating Indy Lights, which 2009 I was 18 years old, so it was perfect. I could do a second year with my age. My teammate was Hildebrand, and he was much older at that point that I could kind of like take that risk of repeating. And it was at the banquet, that 2009 banquet in Miami that I was approached by Brian Herta. And that's when he was like, you know what, we're thinking on starting an Indy Lights, an IndyCar team, and it'll be awesome if you can join us. And as soon as he said Indy 500, I'm like, where do I sign?
Right.
Did not think it twice. I'm like, I didn't care if anything else, just being given the opportunity to jump in on the Indy 500. So we started from scratch with not a lot. We're a very small team, very small sponsorships. The William Rast racing sponsorship, which was awesome, by the way. But as a starting team and starting everything was a struggle. Became the first 1990s baby to be in the field of the 500. And from there, everything was history. Just loved it and just didn't want to leave it. And actually, we did the Indy 600 that year because we raced the Freedom 100 on Indy Lights and jumped and did the Indy 500. So it was quite the month.
William Rast, was that not a clothing company, right?
I think Justin Timberlake owned it, right? Or he was a part
owner.
Yeah, which was kind of a cool experience. When we signed the contract was at the New York Fashion Week, and so we signed it at the Fashion Week with Justin Timberlake around us, and showing us around. Like as a 19-year-old Colombian kid, just like I was like over the moon on all these opportunities. But yeah, no, it was quite the opportunity for sure.
And then you had, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, but in 2010, when you qualified for the Speedway, is one of the craziest kind of qualifying days ever, right? I mean, you kind of take us through that day.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we were struggling as a one-car team with not the best equipment, and we knew. I mean, we knew it was not going to be like a plug and play for sure. And during a qualifying day, I mean, bump day, we went from fighting 26th to being on the bubble, to being outside the bubble, to being inside, and huge fight to get there. And we kept trimming. The car was very hard to drive, but at the same point, it's like, you know what, we're not going to go any quicker if we don't trim. So I had a big accident on turn one on my try, and I knew that was it. I mean, there was at that point I think it was 33 or 32, but I knew there was a few others that were going to try to improve. I'm in a hospital at that point. I'm getting an MRI. I destroyed like a ligament on my left side of the neck. Like I fissured everything. I mean, I was a mess. I couldn't even hold my head just because it was that bad. So at that point, I'm in an MRI machine, and my dad gets into the technical room, whatever, and starts screaming, and like they go on the microphone, and the guy is telling me, you made it. And I'm like, don't move, like inside the machine. You made it to the 500. And I mean, of course, I'm jumping. At that point, there was no pain, right? The adrenaline was rushing. But Paul Tracy pulled his lap to try to improve, and he couldn't improve. And he bumped himself out, and I went from 34th to 33rd. And that was kind of my story. Which the next day, Paul was trying to buy my ride, which wasn't nice, but that's where you could do that.
Yeah, just an insane situation where it just looked like you were out, and Jay Howard pulled his time too, and neither one could get in.
It was
it was Sarah Fisher's team, I think, then, right? Jay Howard.
Yeah, and that was a big blow to them because they had that sponsorship. I can't remember the name of it. Like, I forget to supply something, and that really hurt
Direct
them
supply
too.
or something
Direct
like
that.
supply, yeah.
It was a big year. Yeah, we made it. We made it to the show, and I remember the famous saying of Brian, like, we're 3 guys in a truck, 3-minute truck or whatever the moving company is, because that was exactly it. We had the same Indy Lights personnel, same engineering department, same everything. We were a very, very small operation. So for us to be in the show, it was very gratifying, and put so much effort, and we put so much time into knowing that it was gonna be hard. I mean, we were definitely not competing with the front. It was just a matter of like making it to the show, and by making it, it was very exciting.
So at that point, I mean, obviously you had raced at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the Indy Lights cars. So going into an IndyCar, like, do you think it was kind of similar, or was it just like a completely different experience?
It was a different monster in many ways. I think the biggest thing was the power. Yeah, the older Indy Lights, with a big V8 and everything, giving some big horsepower anyway. But it was an old school chassis, very, very, very heavy, not very aero efficient, and going into another big V8 power horse. That's kind of the biggest aspect, like having to realize how much more power you had in your hands, and how to be efficient with it, and take advantage of it with another not very aero efficient car. So I would say in the ovals, it was very, very fun to drive, just because, I mean, those were the days it was 3 wide, and that you had enough downforce to actually keep you grounded for most of the stint without having to lift, and be able to have all these fun battles that I miss very much in IndyCar, to be honest. And that's something that Indy Lights allow you to do. Like we were 4 wide in Indianapolis at the Freedom 100, and IndyCar like allow you to do that with those cars. So the feeling wise, yes, higher speed, higher Gs, but the racing dynamic was very, very similar. You're still very tight against other drivers, and you still were fighting with these steel brakes instead of the carbon that came with the DW12. So very hard to slow down that car, but it was a very, very fun car to drive.
So, I mean, at that point, and this is a question I ask a lot of people who drive an IndyCar, like your first year in IndyCar. Did you have any moment, like kind of like a welcome to the big leagues moment, where maybe you passed somebody, someone knew who you were, or just a moment where you're like, man, I can't believe I'm actually racing an IndyCar right now?
Yeah, I had to pinch myself every now and then, for sure. But looking back nowadays, I also gave a lot of things for granted. I think that it's not as if it was given in an easy way or not. I mean, I fought every single championship, and I won everything that I had to win in order to get there. But I was speaking with Hinge like a bit ago, and one of my my biggest problems was getting there that quick, because I was 18. I was, like a maturity level was not there. I knew I was quick, but putting that speed into points, putting that speed into, I did few very, very silly mistakes that that should have never happened if you had the right mentality. So I do see the young Seb gave a lot of things for granted when I got to IndyCar, and then I learned from there, and it's one of those aspects. Like I would have repeated things in different manner, but I still had to pinch myself again every now and then, just being lucky enough to be part of such a field of racers, of people that most of them I followed my whole racing career, right? Being teammates with the TK, for example, a guy that I admired so much coming out of go-karts, and in Brazil, where I used to live, they saw him up there, of course, and you learned a lot from him. So then, just not only seeing as teammates, but now you're racing against them. That was pretty cool.
And you also talked about how Juan Pablo Montoya was just a big, kind of like a hero to you growing up. And I mean, you got to race against him in 2014 as well. So I'm sure that was also a very special experience.
Oh, for sure. Montoya, it was always kind of like that big name just for us Colombians, and
Sure.
and we've always had a great relationship. But then being able to share the same racetrack, and to look back and man, my first ever go-kart race was kind of my number was number 6, because he was number 6 in the championship, and I chose that because of him. And if you look at my first helmet, it was a Montoya helmet. So it was looking up, and then at the same time saying, no, I deserve my spot here. Now it's I don't see him as an idol right now. I see him as my competitor, and we've had some magic battles throughout my career, not only on IndyCar but in sports cars. We've had some super cool battles that until today just brings me a smile every time I think about them. So yeah, it's pretty cool to race against your idols, but it's even better when you're going at it and we're strong together.
It's funny that you mentioned your youth, because that was something I was going to ask you about, and we're talking about 2010, 2009, 2011, and people, like you said, you were 18 years old, 19 years old. You're only 31 today. You're in your prime essentially right now. And that was something I was going to ask you about, kind of what you thought about that, but also at the same time, I almost feel like you said, you come along a little early because it seemed like you just had you would get your opportunities and things didn't quite work out, and then you take the 2014 Grand Prix here in Indianapolis. I mean, you're finally showing people, hey, I this is how I got here. And then IndyCar, and I know they were just trying things, and they were trying to get interest in the sport, and they were kind of taking a package that wasn't made for standing starts and trying to do standing starts. And unfortunately, you're on the pole, and it doesn't take off. And you weren't the only one. I mean, I think there was another car stalled too. And unfortunately, you get hit, and your day's over. And it seemed like you were just your youth, and you were just kind of snake bit a little bit in your career.
Yeah, I would say
IndyCar career, I should say. I mean, I need to say IndyCar career.
No, I completely agree. And then I look back, and I had amazing opportunities, right? I mean, just being part of the field alone, that's already a huge victory. But at the same point, it's just I look back, and I was almost always gasping for air as soon as I left Indy Lights, because as soon as I jumped into Heritage in 2010, then they were going with the Weldon for 2011, and so I'm out of a ride, and got lucky that Conquest Racing with Eric Bachelard, they showed some interest, and but they end up shutting down completely. That was their year that they left IndyCar, and again, I was asking for air just to see what's next, and then I got a super cool call from Jay Penske to run in Dragon Penske, and but his focus was already in Formula E. So at the end of the year, they shut down. So again, it's it was never at that point that I could be stable, with
Right.
the right material. That was an awesome year having Sebastian Bourdais as my teammate. But we knew that was their last season, and we didn't know that in the beginning. So it's kind of it was a big opportunity, because I thought that finally I had a 3-year contract actually with them, and but their mission was already in Formula E, and then should we go Formula E or should we see what happens? And then TK ends up winning that year, goes to Ganassi, and I got stranded in a flight with Jimmy Vasser going to Toronto, and we signed a deal right there, just going because there was nothing going on with Dragon. And then that end of the year, again, it was just a matter of, I never had that platform, right? I never had kind of that
Right.
perfect kind of moment of feeling that the team and everything was in the right place, and myself also, my mindset, as I said in 2013 with Dragon, I just go back and I said, man, I could have done things a bit differently. I could have approached things a bit differently, but I also wasn't given those tools to actually excel in many ways. So 14 was a big year, because he was finally kind of back with Sebastian Bourdais as a teammate. So it was a little bit of regularity, having an amazing teammate and somebody that we got along very well, and we developed very well. And month of May, as you say, it was turning out to be quite already the start of the month, and we had and that was not many people were having that issue, because the cars were not designed to start, and we were designing this map with Chevy to actually make it somewhat a electronic standing start, and it kept failing, and I was good doing it in manual mode, and manual, I never had that issue. But being forced to go into that specific electronic mode, and you see all the lights pop up and whole emergency mode go into your car, I knew that was the end of us. Few others had the same issue. I'm saying it was only us. But as you say, it would have been an amazing opportunity to see what we were capable of doing with finally getting our feet planted. Of course, the car was destroyed, and that was the car that we were going to run for the month of May for the 500 as well. So now we had to piece together a car for the 500, which we knew was not going to be solid, because it was not going to be as aerodynamically correct as the hundreds of hours they put into the main car. And that kind of started, and from there on, it was just a snowball effect, unfortunately. But again, I look at it and I still see how fortunate we were to actually be there. It's just a matter of, oh man, I never got a chance to kind of put it just together and just kind of get that feel,
What is that feeling like? Because say, I can only imagine. I mean, being stranded at a stoplight, right? When the light turns green and your car dies, right? What is that feeling like, sitting there knowing that there's a great chance you're going to get hit?
Of just because we had that first lap, because before,
Right.
and at that point it failed, and I'm like, it's failing. We cannot do this on the map that we are set to put on the standing start. And I remember requesting very, very vocally that I wanted to do it manually. So we had one lap to get it sorted before we got back to the start finish and do the real start. And it was overheating. The whole system was overheating. The engine was overheating. The manual mode at that point, it was going to be like almost mandatory, just because the emergency mode, everything, like it was not even shifting at that point. So it started way before I actually got to park it. And at that point, it was just a matter of, you're a passenger. So you sit down, you go through your whole scenario, you put it in neutral, just because, you have to wait for the whole field to come in, and the car's going to overheat. All the alarms of overheating are on. Then you go through your whole method. Actually, I am on my simulator here sitting down, so I can see like what I was doing, just getting, the bytes exactly the specific number that we were set. The other pad were 100%. So like everything like we are told to do. And I'm like, I should just break the rules and do it manually, because something is going to go wrong. And immediately just completely goes to the point that there's not even a shift. There's not even nothing going on the car. And that's pure frustration. So you already know before the actual lights start to go that the race is not going to start on your end. And that point is you start realizing, okay, well, there's 20 some other cars behind me. And desperation starts to come into play. And you start to get a little bit anxious of, mostly more than myself, it was the car. Because I'm like, this is my car for the month of May. If something happens to this, it's going to be just the end of May for me. And green flag goes. And as soon as I saw Hunter Ray, which was number 2, go at the speed that he was from just 10 feet away, he was already doing 100 miles an hour by the time he passed me. I'm just making the math. I'm like, if that's what 100 miles an hour looks like, I cannot even imagine at what speed will the last car gonna come my way. So I'm just doing all the, almost like jumping out of the car to try to get some acknowledgement. And at that point, it was just being a passenger and just hoping for the best. I just remember I just kind of like clenched and kind of like just take a big breath, because it's like the circumstances were so that I was going to get hit, which eventually happened. And thankfully, it could have been a lot worse. There's a few very crazy pictures of Aloysius' nose, the Russian, just very like inches away from my helmet. It's like he crashed into me, and then we went like kind of like in a weird kind of like sequence, and like he was my helmet, and he just scraped my visor like nothing. So it could have been a lot worse. I still had a few broken things here and there. Met the best chiropractor in the world that put me back together once again, and yeah, just go back at it the next day.
So we alluded to a little bit your first year at Indy, but talk a little bit about what's that like on race day? I mean, your first race day in the Indy 500. I'm guessing it's got to be overwhelming. Obviously, there's a lot more people in the stands than you're used to during qualifying or practice.
Yeah, so thankfully for me, I had a chance to experience all that the year prior in Indy Lights, right? So, and that's when Carb Day had quite a number of people, and then Indy 500 as just seeing it from outside, it was you already kind of like experience the extent of what Indianapolis is. Then the next year, as a driver in the field, it's even crazier, just because it's a moving organism almost. You had to over 400 and some thousand people, if not more, just moving like a one. It's just something that nowhere in the world can recreate that. That's also the cool aspect about it. The biggest one-day event in history. So I just remember, most importantly, the green room. Before you get into the introductions, I think after a long month, that's the first time you get kind of like to be not the driver, but just be Sebastian, and getting a little bit of like 20 minutes of breathing and kind of like congratulating everybody. And I remember Jack Nicholson was the starter, and like I remember I was sitting there and I was kind of like talking to, I don't know who it was. My brother was there, and then this guy comes to me and it's like, so you're young, you're very young. And I'm like looking at this guy, kind of like, oh yeah, I'm a baby. And we're talking about something. And it's like, well, best of luck, whatever. I'm like, yeah, thank you, bye. I'm like, what is this old guy wants? And my brother's like, dude, that's Jack Nicholson. That is the Batman, dude. I'm like, oh my God. I was so focused in the moment. I didn't realize how big of a guy I had by my side. But it gets real when you're being presented. Once they called your name and you're on that little podium and you start waving and you kind of look the whole extent of the racetrack and there's no one seat that's open, that's when you realize how big of a moment it is for you and for the day itself. So it's very special, and all the times that I got to do it, that was my favorite. Just getting to take a breath and just look at the extent of the history of this place.
Obviously, you drove in 6 Indy 500. So would you say each one was kind of equally special for you? Like you kind of took it in like it was your first one? Or did you, I don't know, maybe get used to it, or that may be the wrong word to use, but.
I think you never get used to it. And I think that's something that should not be something that you get used to it, because it's a level of respect that you gotta give back to the history of the place and the extent of what it means to you as a driver, as an athlete. I would say that very special moments, for example, like 2012 racing with Andretti, just having like a super cool kind of like teammate lineup and being able to have the strength, of actually being in the front and actually leading practice sessions and everything. I mean, that was amazing. I remember like a radio host from Finland called me like after I think it was last practice session that I was leading, and like, how does it feel to be the quickest man in the world right now? And it hits. I mean, you don't realize it's true. So it's, but yeah, it never gets old. It always gets you in a different way, and because every single day is a very different racetrack, it's a very different car. It's not like other races that's consistent. I mean, Indy is not consistent, and I'm a firm believer of what a lot of the veterans say. Like Indy chooses you. I think that's something that I do actually believe.
We talked about the unfortunate start to the race 2014, and then the Grand Prix, and then you were unfortunately involved in another race that went terribly wrong, which was the Vegas race. How? First of all, I don't remember. I didn't look it up. Were you involved in the crash at all?
I got hit. I survived. I had I could not continue because of there was a suspension arm from EJ Viso that punctured the radiator, the tub, and it was like about 7 inches from my chest.
Oh, wow.
And that was something absurdly crazy, because I made it to the pits. I mean, I remember like a Visa kind of like ramping over, I think it was Mira or somebody, landing on this side, and there was like huge explosion. I'm just looking at pieces all over the place and just trying to kind of like get away. I made it to the apron. I had 2 flat tires, but that was it. I managed to kind of like do my lap. We reconnected with everybody. And then, it's red flag, so they put us in the pit lane. At that moment, we didn't know much. I mean, we just knew it was a big wreck. And I remember like parking behind Scott Dixon, and the crew chief came to me like, don't move, the medical is coming. And I'm just like, I'm fine. I mean, like, I don't know what is that you're saying. So as soon as he said like, don't move, are you okay? Like, are you bleeding? And I'm like, and then I look down, and that's when I realized that the suspension arm was completely intact, just going through the radiator, through the top, and just like almost piercing me as well. That's when, I was like completely lost it. Just like you get the shakes pretty badly.
Now, did you? So you said you went around, but you didn't immediately go into pits. You made the next lap before coming into pits. So
yeah.
What I remember watching it on obviously in-car video, and I remember looking at that, and it looked like something out of a Hollywood movie. It didn't look real. I mean, what was it like having to drive through that debris field?
Well, at that point, you're kind of like on diagnosis mode as a driver. At that moment, you're okay. Like, I got 2 right flats, prepping your mechanics to be ready, because at that point, like, we didn't know if it was just going to continue, if we're going to stop it. So I'm in full-blown diagnosis mode, checking that the car, everything is good, everything felt okay. I had no alarms at that point, so I'm fairly positive that we can continue the race, and we just need to change the tires. So I'm not a huge wreck looker, even like on the highway. Like, I hate people just slowing down and kind of like checking somebody wrecked or somebody that has been pulled over to the side and then they slow down just to see him. Like, I hate that kind of people. So I never look at what's happening outside of my control. Like, I focus on what I can control, and that case was my immediate car and myself. I knew it was massive, because I saw the explosion, and I saw the fire, and I saw smoke and all these things, and of course the debris. But at that point, you just like approach it like any other wreck. Basically, it's like, okay, just like shake it up. You survived. Just to focus on the next lap, basically.
Yeah, just the video footage of it looks so unreal. I just never, and I really understand and respect what you're saying about being so concentrated. I have this saying, I'd like to have a race car driver where a bomb could go off and they don't really even acknowledge the bomb goes off. They just keep driving. You know what I'm saying? They just avoid it and they keep driving. Like you're not acknowledging. You something happened, but you're focused in on what you're doing. And
you got to train yourself like that, and you cannot. A lot of the crashes that happen is because you get hypnotized by the wreck itself. Most of the ovals, you're so focused on your line and you're so focused on everything else that whenever something is happening, you lose all your focus on yourself. So most of the time, it's called a tunnel vision, that you look at somebody spinning and you just hypnotized by looking at the car spinning, and then you ended up like following him as well. So I think that's something I do have to train, and I think every driver has to train to kind of like avoid and just keep in the moment and keep on track of what you're capable of doing.
No, it makes sense. Absolutely makes sense.
It's very easy to get hypnotized because if you're not racing, it's something uncommon. I mean, if you really think about it, how many times like you're on a highway and you see a crash happen at the moment? I mean, very rarely. I mean, 0.0 something of a percent maybe. Probably seen a couple of crashes in my whole life, like outside of racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very common on the racetracks, and it's very common to see somebody spin in front of you and somebody just make a mistake, drop a wheel, things like that, and you kind of like try to take advantage of those mistakes rather than get hypnotized by those mistakes. So when somebody is losing it on a road course or an oval, you're most likely already strategizing, how am I going to capitalize on his mistake rather than be part of his mistake. I think that's an important part, not be part of his mistake.
Right. One thing I wanted to ask about, because so a good friend of the show is Roberto Guerrero. We've actually had him on, and actually I designed some t-shirts for him because I have a racing merchandise online store thing, and we did some Roberto Guerrero t-shirts. And I know he talked a little bit about you, but he was like your driver coach, is that correct? One of your first years at Indy?
Yes. He was actually my spotter and my initial, I would say, coach at Brian Herta. And that was something super special, just history that he has for our country, and a guy that is probably one of the nicest human beings I've ever met in my life, together with his whole beautiful family. So it's a guy that I care for a lot, like even today. Like we have a very very close relationship, and it's just cool to see where that all started, like, at the Indy 500.
Right, and he was definitely completely different. I mean, he raced before you were even born, but I'm guessing he was still like an idol in Colombia. He's probably like one of the main idols before, like Juan Pablo Montoya, right? He was a pretty big deal.
Huge deal. I mean, he was a different generation,
right,
for sure. I mean, when he was on pole, it was 1993. Like I was, like 2 years old. So I never saw him race. I never grew up seeing him race. And when I started racing, it was Juan Montoya. So like, he was a different world. And I think that only when I got super into racing was that I realized that just history, like there's a few big racers, one of them being Roberto. Unfortunately, like we were not taught in school about him. We were not they never told us there was a lot of big names in sport, not only racing. We had a few big boxers that made it huge back in the day. We have a few very big cyclists that right now cyclist world in Colombia is crazy, winning the Tour de France and everything. So Colombia being that small, it's incredible the amount of cool athletes that it exports. But most importantly, the amazing human being that Roberto is. I mean, something that even until today, I mean, we do a lot of events together, stunt driving and a few fun events with Jaguar and Range Rover.
Right.
And the level of love that people have for him, it's just amazing. Something that he steps one day in a speedway, and it's just he just goes back to the 80s, and people will just love him that much. So that's pretty cool to experience.
Yeah, for people today, it's hard to explain really what a big deal he was, and the Indianapolis fans loved Roberto, and he's such a great race car driver, and then he overcome some pretty severe obstacles to get back to racing. It's just amazing story, and
Nice.
Yeah, great guy.
And he can drive, man. He can drive. We did the Baja 1000 together, and you look at him. You know, he's like a skinny dude and everything, but he jumps in a car and you're on his passenger side, and he just puts you like to like see exactly who he was, and he continues to be. I mean, the level of skill that he has, the level of professionalism that he continues to have, and he's just a skill. I mean, it's just absolutely on road, off road. It's just somebody that I like very much. Clearly.
And so talking about different forms of you can't, it's just a big blur. I just see a big blur moving behind you.
Yeah, you see a big butt just moving around.
So talking about different forms of racing. So you have done the 24 Hours of Daytona. You've done sports car racing, but you've done 24 Hours of Daytona 3 times, and you won your class in 2019. So talk a little bit about that experience.
It's such a cool opportunity, and that's something that came very randomly but very naturally, and it's something that I did a few endurance events in South America that I loved, but it was 6-hour events, and we were pretty strong, and 2018 it was like a year after my last 500, and I'm like, you know what, I had a really good opportunity to bring some Colombian sponsorship into racing, but I was structuring a Colombian team. Like the way I sold it to the government, it's like I won in 5 years to make this team 100% Colombian, from the truck driver to the engineer to the driver in the lineup, and they loved it, because like the way I sold it to the president of the Ministry of Sports, it was like, we have the capability, we have the level of talent, not only on the athlete aspect, but on the engineering aspect. We have incredibly smart young students from engineering that I want to kind of like show them a broader view of the world, not to just keep the small mind in our country, but like expand themselves. And they love that. So that's when sports cars came into the map. It was a real disaster of a year. We signed with the wrong chassis manufacturer. We were the only Ligiers, and I don't speak bad or ill for nobody, but Oreca was in a different series, different category. I mean, we were really, there was nothing for us to do with Ligier. It was very, very substandard to fight. But then 2019, together with Roberto Gonzalez, which was our teammate in 2018 for the endurance events, he gave me a call to jump with his team, with the Oreca, and race alongside Maldonado, Pastor. And it was an amazing experience, because I remember I went to the roar, just walking, just checking everything, just kind of like saying hi to everybody. And he's like, "Where's your helmet?" And I'm like, "I got it in the back of my car." Why? You always, that's the reason. You always, as a racer, you always have your helmet with you. Okay, well, we need for you to jump in the car. And I jumped in at the roar. We killed it at the roar, and he's like, "Would you like to race the 24 hours with us?" And I'm like, who would say no to that opportunity? With the opportunity. Well, they were WEC. They were doing the World Endurance Championship, and we just went at it, and it was a lot of different stages. We lost the race many times, we won the race many times, and we went from 5 laps down to leading to crashing in the last lap to red flag and winning it. So it was a so many emotions, and just being part of that very elite group of people that can hold their Rolex as their trophy, and having Montoya again, just having 3 of those. I'm like, okay, well, at least there's something I can get closer to him.
I know somebody that has a Rolex from there, and I every time Daytona 24 come around, I used to. I haven't lately, but I had to ask him if he's got that thing polished up and wearing it, just so he could tell people he won it. It's just during race time.
If I could work out with that thing, I'll work out with that thing.
So
I've been told not to. It's,
yeah,
the appraisal goes down. But for me, it's just more. It's just what it means. I mean, just
sure.
It's just. I wish because I remember Ritmo Mundo, when we would win races in Indy Lights, they'll give us a watch. So I like that concept of being able to wear something that is functional. Be able to just like, oh, what time is it? But at the same time, let me tell you something. There's a story behind it. So yeah, I like those kind of trophies.
Yeah, I forgot about Revo Mundo. They were big in IndyCar. I mean, they had a big presence, and they just kind of fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah, they did. I don't know why.
Because they sponsor Weldon. I think they had a deal with Milkaduno. And yeah, like you said, they sponsor like the series or whatever.
Yeah. I don't think any of my watches are functional right now, so maybe that's something to do with it. I did say that, and I back it. I completely think so.
So I don't really have anything else. You have anything else, Scott?
I don't. I was going to ask. So what? I know you mentioned before we come on that you do the Ferrari Challenge. What else? What's your days like these days? I mean, do you have a business? What are you doing?
Everywhere. I keep busy. Yes, I have a few entrepreneurship concepts, or not concepts. I mean, they're reality. I own a specialty garage in Colombia, which we specialize in kind of like specialty projects with cool cars and stuff. We have an import of auto parts from Asia, Europe, and America to Colombia. That's something that has been pretty fun to be part of, and actually a lot of business-to-business concepts that you learn from racing, and just applying it outside of racing is kind of cool. It's called Reparo. So if you guys need any parts, reparo.com. It's your place to go. And as well, together with a couple other mates, we are with the Driven Sports Performance, which we're starting to manage a few youngsters and giving them a little bit of a north and horizons. So I have a few athletes under our flag that not only we coach, or I personally coach, but we structure their careers in the US and Europe mostly. So keeps you busy.
Are they drivers based in different parts of the world, or do you concentrate Colombia or the US, or
a little bit of everything? Right now, of course, Latin America, it's kind of like our forte, just based on our demographic and our knowledge of the market as is. But we have a little bit of everything.
I mean, is it a I mean, obviously money is a huge part of the sport. Obviously, I mean, it goes without saying. Is it? Do you actively, help put together the deals for these people for their careers to be able to evolve and grow?
Yes, that's huge, and that's something. So I'm not retired in any form. I'm still pushing to jump back in.
Well, you're 31 years old. You're 31 years old, man. You're in your prime still.
I'm just waiting for that. I look at, when Simon Pagenaud got his gig, or when the Will Power got, because I remember like in 2009, going into Will's apartment here in Carmel, and just at that moment he had nothing, and he was kind of like stuck and just like trying to see what was going to happen with his life. And that's when he got a call when Elio was having his situation, and then his career has skyrocketed. And so like being there, as an 18-year-old kid, kind of like seeing somebody that I follow very much, and I loved his career because I love Champ Car. I really, really did. And I was so stoked for him. And until today, we're super good mates. Just like just seeing us eating a sushi, naked chopsticks in Broad Ripple, just kind of like poor because he had nothing else to do. And just jump in the sim. He was the first time I actually experienced a in-house simulator. It was his, and get his break. So I'm still keeping myself up to date, contact with everybody. Something that I feel proud is I never closed any door behind me. I kept everything very in line, and together with Gary Peterson and AFS Racing, it continues to be an opportunity that when the right opportunity arises, we will take it. But we don't want to be, the last few years, it's been just fighting against European money that it's impossible to, like the drivers that didn't make it in Formula One, and they bring these Formula One budgets. And that's something that we knew it was nothing that we were interested in. And I think it's just a cycle that's just got to happen. And I have my age to my advantage or disadvantage. I don't know how to see it when you look at Herta, the moves that he did. And that's the first time I felt old. Was watching, I think it was Pato on passing Scott Dixon on the outside of turn one in Road America. And I'm like, I would have not done that. That's when you start like wow, that was legit. Or when I think it was just watching the onboard of Herta in Nashville on qualifying. I'm like, the ways that he was so comfortable with that car. Once you're connected, and we've all had that moment. For me, it was probably Toronto, 2015. Once you're in line with your car, you can do magic with the car. But this younger generation, they have something very special that I can't wait to be on track and kind of like give them what I have to see how can we bounce.
Well, you sound pretty introspective today, so I have one last question. What would the not so much older Sebastian tell the younger one? Like, what would you tell yourself today, the 18-year-old version of you?
What would I tell myself? If I could have gone back in time, just because I saw a movie the other day, somebody went back in time. Awful movie, by the way. But I would just say, don't give things for granted. Don't give things for granted as much as you know that you deserve to be there. Keep working at it. I think I did give a few things for granted that should have never been the case. Because now, I'm 31, I'm still young, but at the same time, I think I should have been a little bit more active. I should be more on Indycar than I was.
Well, yeah. I absolutely respect that opinion. We all got to learn, right?
Everything.
That's just how it is. That's right. Hey, it's been an absolute pleasure for me. Thank you so much.
Yep.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, Scott.
Are you going to be around the Speedway this year in the month of May?
You bet I'll be there. I got my veterans driver program, everything already in line. I'll be there, but hopefully on a car. Who knows? We're still pushing. There is a couple potential programs that until the last day I'm not going to give up on, and we'll see how we can get older Seb back in the saddle and show what we were capable of doing.
Well, I wish you nothing but the best. I hope
you.
that day comes for you. And if I see you, I'll definitely say hi.
Please do, guys. Thank you. Appreciate the
Yep.
invitation, and we'll see you guys in a few
Anytime.
months.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
Sebastian.
Bye.
See ya.